This is StoryRobot. Welcome to r/pettyrevenge. Our first story of today is, my neighbors partied and kept me awake. Years ago I lived in a classic Southern California apartment complex. The kind that is 2 stories high and all have balconies or porches if you are on the ground floor. At the time I worked in a grocery store and could have shifts that started as early as 3:30 a.m. When I had that shift on weekends, sleep could be hard to come by due to various gatherings around the apartment complex. I usually would not say anything about noise until 11 o'clock on weeknights and until midnight on weekends. A new couple moved in right above us and were incredibly noisy at all times. They hosted a party on Friday and Saturday night. Since they had just moved in, I decided to let it go and not be that neighbor. The next weekend it happened again, and on Friday night about midnight, I went outside and looked up at the people on the balcony and asked if they could quiet down. They mostly complied and I went to bed. The next night they were at it again, and this time when I went out to ask them to be quiet I got a lot of, "Frick you," and, "Just go back inside." I did. I figured that I would wait for a better time to actually meet the upstairs neighbors. The next Friday afternoon rolls around and I can tell they are getting ready to have another party. They see me and start giving me grief and letting me know that I had better not complain, etc. The party wrapped up around 1:30 a.m. Saturday night was worse. They were still partying when I left for work at 3 a.m. I heard some parting shots as I walked to my car. I knew I had to act, but I did not know. Then slowly a plan emerged and I knew what I was going to do. I baked cupcakes for the new neighbors. I waited until Thursday morning at 2:45 a.m. I took the plate of cupcakes to the neighbors. I went to their door and police knocked. The door opened and he was mad. He started to say something and then he looked up. He was about 5 feet 6 inches and I am 6 feet 1 inch tall. He was slight and I probably weighed about 175 pounds. I just put my best neighborly grin on my face and held out the plate of cupcakes. He regained some composure and starts to angrily ask me what I was doing. Then he said my favorite line, "Do you know what time it is? I have to get up for work in a few hours." Frick, you are rude. Once again I held out the cupcakes and said, "I am so sorry, I just figured that you are always up at this time since I see you every weekend." It was then that it clicked in his feeble mind what I was getting at. He accepted the cupcakes. I fully thought that I would have to do this again, but he seemed to have learned his lesson. After that, most parties wrapped up by 12:30 a.m. Our second story of today is, landlord asks for more rent. I ask him to fix things first, knowing he won't fix them. So I've been living in this house share on a rolling contract for over 2 years. The house is very run down, but nothing is dangerous or inhabitable or depressing. The landlord is really bad at fixing stuff, and when he does he turns up unannounced, against the law here, and does a really botched job. Last September, the landlord was clearly feeling very motivated as he announced he was going to renovate the kitchen. The old kitchen had cupboards without doors, a really cheap old oven that used to break all the time, really shabby worktops, etc. My best guess was it was at least 20 years old. He said the renovations would be done quickly as possible. He quoted a week to us, but it actually went on for 2 months and he broke some laws because he disconnected the oven for several days while there were tenants living in the house. While the kitchen looks fine now, it was clearly a case of get in and out and do the bare minimum as cheap as possible. He also painted some of the communal areas really badly. He put 2 new to the property, actually second-hand, freezers in, and they didn't work very well, so he ended up trying to fix them himself, and long story short, I lost all my food in the freezer last December. So by the end of it all, I was feeling very annoyed with him. In January 2020 the landlord sent all the tenants an email telling us he had to put the rent up and that we would have to sign new contracts. My rent was only going up by £25 per month as I have my own ensuite bathroom, which is pretty much falling apart, but he didn't renovate it, and I could afford the increase so didn't bother to argue it. I emailed him back and said it was fine, but there were a few issues in my room that I'd like him to fix, but that I was happy for that to be written into the contract with a time frame for the work to be done agreed by us both so he could get the higher rent rate straight away. I sent him a list of the things and most of them are really minor, like, wardrobe door handle needs replacing, there's a crack in the sink. The biggest thing on the list was the problem he's known about for at least 2 years, the shower leaks. I knew full well that he wouldn't get round to doing any of the repairs. He told me that I didn't need to sign the contract, pay higher rent until he'd fixed the things in my room. I said, okay. And have never mentioned any of it to him ever again. The things I asked him to fix aren't exactly impeding my enjoyment of life, so I don't even get annoyed about the fact that they're broken. 10 months later I'm still paying my original rent rate, and every month I save the amount my rent would have gone up by. It's a really small, pathetic thing to do, but it makes me proud every time my rent is due because I'm £250 better off and counting. Our third and last story of today is, want to not clean a store amidst a pandemic. Enjoy the health department. So, I worked at a store, a cookie cutter store that is a well-known chain. We begin the tale when I first started. I started at this store in June of 2020, about 3 to 4 months into the global pandemic. After working there for a little bit, I noticed that I was never told when, and with what I was supposed to clean the carts, baskets, or anything in the store. So, I went to my store manager and asked, "What am I supposed to clean the carts with?" To which she responded with, "Oh, that's not your job, they clean the store at night, so it doesn't matter." I was a little suspicious of this response, because our store manager didn't even let us vacuum the store. So I asked the assistant managers that close, to which they said that they in fact do not wipe any of the carts down. So, then the next day, I come in and the store manager comes to me and says, "Oh, I never answered your question, here are some wipes, you can wipe them down if you want to, but you know, the virus is spread through the air. That is why we have to wear these stupid masks, so wiping things down doesn't really do anything. It also makes all the carts sticky and gross. Also, if you want to be technical, we would need to wipe all the merchandise down too, because you have the people in the factories that make them touching them, then the redistribution centers, then us, and it would be a mess and take too long." I literally sat there biting my tongue so hard. Most of our customers are older people who live off of government benefits and they come in and buy stuff because it is insanely cheap, so my store manager wasn't only putting them at risk, but the employees too. So I took the wipes, and would wipe everything down as much as possible during my shift. However, sadly, I could only do it twice per shift, the start and end of my shift. Eventually I got tired of being the only one attempting to clean the store. So, I called the lovely health department. When they responded to my call, I was amazed at the stuff we were supposed to be doing that we weren't doing. Such as, rotating registers, having a dedicated person to clean the carts, being allowed every hour to go wash our hands, etc. I filled out my report and was told they would be in contact. However, I wasn't sure if they would actually do it, so I filed another complaint with the Cooperate office just to cement my bases. When I called Cooperate, I was told them everything else my boss was doing. Such as throwing merchandise if it wasn't put out to her liking. She would literally pull it off the shelf and throw it, talking bad about employees to other managers. I have video evidence of her blaming all the staff on why nothing gets done, and all we do is sit around and talk, and for literally telling us not to enforce the mask mandates, or the elderly shopping hours. I eventually did quit, and couple of days later, I just simply walked out. Fast forward 2 weeks, I go back in because I needed something, and I hear that the boss has been suspended for 2 weeks for failure to comply with the company policies and local mandates. They also hired a cleaning company to come and clean the store, and hired someone just to clean the store throughout the day. Thank you for watching. Error. Problem detected. Not enough subscribers. Please subscribe, like and comment.